A 9-year-old boy bravely stands up during his own father's wedding and, in front of all the guests, interrupts the ceremony to reveal a terrifying secret about the bride. Sounds like something out of a movie, right? But what if I told you this story is real? That this young boy had to face the burden of discovering that the woman his father was about to marry had dark intentions hidden beneath her charming facade? This is one of those situations you never think will happen in real life, but when it does, it leaves everyone in shock. Because what's at stake is not just his father's happiness, but also the safety of the entire family. But before we dive into the story, comment below where you're watching from today. And if you enjoy stories with unexpected twists and life-changing moments, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Noah, just 9 years old, always had a sharp intuition. He knew something was off when Sophia came into his father's life. Her smile, seemingly warm, never reached her eyes. It was as if she was hiding something dark. Noah couldn't quite explain what he felt, but he knew he had to act. And it was with great courage that he decided to investigate. After all, what could a child do in such a complex situation? It was an act of pure bravery, driven by unconditional love and an unwavering faith in justice. Without fully understanding what was happening, he dived headfirst into a discovery that would change everything. As days passed, Sophia's presence became increasingly oppressive. Noah watched every gesture, every furtive glance. He felt his heart race whenever she approached, but it wasn't out of fear. It was because of his determination to protect his father. The feeling that something much bigger was at stake pushed him to keep going. And despite his young age, his courage overcame any obstacle. He didn't know it yet, but he was about to face an emotional twist that would transform him forever. After all, how can one hold on to hope when everything seems to be falling apart? During a family lunch, Noah noticed Sophia's distant look. He tried to start a conversation, but she seemed absent, as if she were in another world. The boy, with his keen nature, realized that something was very wrong. It wasn't just the way she avoided eye contact with his father, but the cold tone she used when he wasn't around. Something inside Noah told him she was hiding a secret, something that could destroy the newly built happiness of his family. It was as if a shadow hovered over them, threatening to extinguish all the light his father had regained. Then the revelation came like a blow. One night, unable to sleep, Noah decided to get a glass of water in the kitchen. That's when he heard Sophia's voice on the phone, speaking softly, almost whispering. "The insurance is almost ready," she said. Noah's heart stopped for a second. Insurance? What did that mean? He knew his father had recently taken out a life insurance policy, but what did Sophia have to do with it? The revelation hit like a bomb. From that moment on, he knew he had to act. It was not just a matter of protecting his father, it was a matter of emotional and physical survival. In the following days, Noah kept up the facade. He pretended that nothing had changed, that he still saw Sophia as his father's new friend. But inside, he was on high alert, watching every move, listening to every word. The tension in his small body was palpable, but he couldn't falter. After all, if he didn't take action, who would? Noah's courage grew day by day, fueled by the fear of losing the most important person in his life. And it was at that moment that he realized true love involves sacrifices, and sometimes you have to put yourself in danger to protect those you love. One afternoon, while his father was at work, Noah sneaked into Sophia's room. His heart was pounding so hard he could hear it in his ears. Every step felt like a challenge. What if she caught him there? What would he say? But he couldn't turn back. He needed proof, something to confirm his suspicions. He rummaged through drawers carefully. He found some old photos, a letter, and then something that made his skin crawl. A life insurance policy with his father's name on it. There was a huge sum written there, something Noah knew could change anyone's life. But why would she have this document hidden? When he found her laptop open on the bed, he hesitated for a moment. It was wrong to invade someone's privacy. He knew that. But, at that moment, it seemed like the fate of his family depended on his actions. With trembling fingers, he opened the screen. What he saw next left him stunned. Emails exchanged with a man named Oliver, discussing details about the insurance policy, dates, and what they would do after everything was settled. It was the proof he needed. There, on that screen, was the revelation that confirmed his worst fears. But how could he tell his father? Noah knew he needed to think carefully. He couldn't just come out and say everything. His father would never believe him. He needed a plan, something that would not only reveal the truth but also protect them both. He spent the night wide awake, imagining every scenario, every possible reaction. The courage that once seemed enormous now felt small in the face of the immense problem they faced. But he couldn't give up. Perseverance was what drove his heart now. And with this strength, he decided to act. The decision he would make the next day would change their lives forever. On the morning of the wedding, Noah was determined. He knew that if he did nothing, he could lose his father forever. He put his plan into action, each step carefully thought out. When it was time for the vows, Noah stood up. The silence fell over the hall. "Dad, wait!" he shouted. The tension was palpable. All eyes turned to him, including Sophia's, who turned pale. It was as if time had stopped. And at that moment, the truth finally came out. Noah, with a firm voice, told everything he had discovered. His father, incredulous, looked at him and then at Sophia, not knowing what to do. The commotion was immediate. The guests murmured, some tried to calm Noah down, while others looked at Sophia with suspicion. She tried to justify herself, but her voice was trembling. "This is ridiculous. He's just a child," she shouted. But everyone could see the panic in her eyes. Noah's courage had done the unthinkable. It had exposed the truth in front of everyone. His father, still in shock, looked at his son with a mix of sadness and pride. And it was at that moment that Sophia's true face began to show. She knew she was cornered and that, from then on, nothing would be the same. The revelation had a devastating effect. Sophia, now completely unmasked, lost control. She shouted, pointed at Noah, trying to turn the situation around. But no one believed her anymore. It was as if the veil covering her true nature had been torn away once and for all. She tried to leave the hall, but was stopped. Noah's father, still stunned, hugged his son. "You're so brave, my boy," he whispered. And in that embrace, Noah felt the weight of the responsibility he had carried. But he knew it was just the beginning. Sophia fled, but fear still lingered in the air. After all, what else was she capable of doing? Noah and his father knew the battle was far from over. Sophia's escape left many questions unanswered. The police were called, but she seemed to have vanished. It was as if the revelation Noah made had triggered a chain of events they could no longer control. The hope that everything would be resolved seemed distant, but there was something that kept them united. The certainty that, no matter what happened, they would face everything together. The compassion and love they felt for each other were the force that drove them. And even with fear lurking, they knew that together they could overcome any challenge. From the moment Sophia entered their lives, Noah sensed something was off. Her charming smile never seemed to last when his father left the room. When James was around, she was sweet, caring, and seemed genuinely interested in everyone's happiness. But as soon as he turned his back, the atmosphere shifted. It was as if a mask fell, revealing a cold and calculating expression. Noah, despite his young age, felt that something was very wrong. That feeling of fear and apprehension grew stronger each day, as if he was about to witness an unexpected twist. This intuition drove him to pay even more attention. Every day, Sophia became more distant, even while trying to maintain appearances. When she was alone with Noah, her patience seemed to vanish. Small irritations, disdainful looks, curt responses. All of this made the boy feel uncomfortable. And over time, the discomfort turned into fear. He knew she was hiding something, but what could it be? His heart raced whenever she looked at him with that gaze that seemed to pierce his soul. The hope that she was just a complicated person began to fade, giving way to a disturbing certainty. Sophia was not who she seemed to be. Sophia's suspicious behavior wasn't limited to how she treated Noah. He noticed that she spent a lot of time on the phone, especially when James wasn't around. Sometimes she would leave suddenly, saying she needed to take care of something important, but she never explained exactly what it was. In his innocent way, Noah started asking questions. "Why are you always busy when Dad isn't home?" he asked once. Sophia smiled, but her eyes didn't show the same warmth. "Adult stuff, sweetheart," she replied, trying to brush it off. But her answer only made Noah more suspicious. As the days went by, Noah noticed that Sophia avoided certain conversations when he was around. She always changed the subject when James talked about the future, about making plans together. It was as if she didn't want to commit to something she knew wouldn't last. The faith Noah's father had in her contrasted with a growing distrust in the boy's heart. He knew there was more to it, something hidden between the lines of every carefully chosen word Sophia spoke. Each look, each gesture, was a clue to a secret he felt was too terrible to ignore. There was a specific moment that deeply marked Noah. They were all in the living room watching a movie when Sophia received a message. She quickly stood up, turned off her phone, and left, saying she needed to make a call. Curious, Noah followed her silently. Hidden behind the door, he could only hear a few words, but they were enough to heighten his suspicions. "I can't talk now, he's here." "No, it's not ready yet." The feeling that something terrible was about to happen overwhelmed him. The courage began to build inside him, but the fear of being wrong still held him back. Sophia started becoming more hostile towards Noah, as if she sensed that he was growing suspicious. Small malicious comments, impatient looks, even scoldings over trivial things. This only increased the boy's fear, but also his determination. He knew he could no longer ignore what was happening. The truth had to come out, and he would be the one to reveal it. Even without knowing exactly how, he felt he was getting closer and closer to a major revelation. Perseverance was his greatest ally now, and each challenge Sophia threw at him only strengthened his resolve to uncover the truth. One late afternoon, while playing in the backyard, Noah saw Sophia in the distance, talking to a man he had never seen before. They were gesturing and seemed to be arguing. Sophia's expression was tense, almost angry. Noah tried to get closer without being seen, but he ended up tripping and drawing their attention. She quickly said goodbye to the man and came towards him. "What are you doing here?" she asked, her voice filled with irritation. "Nothing, just playing," he replied, trying to sound nonchalant. But the truth is, that scene stayed with him. Who was that man? And why did he seem so important to her? From that day on, Noah decided he needed to do more. He started jotting down every detail, every strange behavior of Sophia. It was as if he was putting together a puzzle where each piece was evidence against her. He knew he had to be discreet, that any mistake could alert her. But the courage he felt in protecting his father was greater than any fear. He remembered the stories of heroes his father used to tell him, and now he felt it was his turn to be one. Even without knowing how it would all end, he had faith that he was doing the right thing. After all, what is courage if not facing the unknown head-on? Noah started paying attention to everything. Phone conversations, unexpected outings, and even the looks Sophia exchanged with strangers on the street. Every detail seemed to confirm what he already knew deep down. The mask she wore was starting to crack, and he was there to see each fragment fall. But, as brave as he felt, a part of him still wanted to be wrong. He felt an overwhelming sense of sadness, thinking that maybe all his suspicions were just a product of his imagination. However, the evidence was piling up, and it was impossible to deny that something was very wrong. One night, Noah decided he needed to talk to his father. He needed to tell him everything he had been seeing, even though he didn't have all the proof. But how could he do that without sounding like a jealous kid? He practiced what he would say several times in front of the mirror. "Dad, I think Sophia isn't who she seems to be," he murmured, trying to find the right words. But every time he prepared to speak, something held him back. What if his father didn't believe him? What if Sophia managed to convince him it was all a lie? The fear of what could happen became an almost insurmountable obstacle. But at the same time, he knew the truth needed to be told. Finally, after many days of hesitation, Noah decided it was time to act. He came up with a simple plan. He would confront Sophia directly, without any pretense. He waited until she was alone, in the kitchen, preparing dinner. With a pounding heart and trembling hands, he walked in. "Sophia, I know what you're doing," he said, trying to keep his voice steady. She stopped what she was doing and looked at him, surprised. "What are you talking about, Noah?" she asked, a tense smile on her lips. But the boy didn't back down. "I know you're deceiving my dad. I saw you talking to that man. And I'm going to tell him everything," he declared, feeling a wave of courage sweep through his body. What happened next was something Noah never expected. Sophia approached him, crouched down to his height, and whispered in a cold voice, "You don't know who you're messing with, Noah. I could ruin you and your father with a snap of my fingers." The boy froze. Those words sounded threatening and real. The revelation of her true nature left him paralyzed. But even with fear gripping his body, Noah knew he couldn't back down. He just ran out, without looking back. He needed to find a way to protect his father and get that woman out of their lives forever. Running down the hallway, Noah felt his heart pounding in his throat. Terror and adrenaline mixed in his small body. He knew time was running out. He needed to warn his father before something worse happened. And even with all the threats Sophia had made, the courage inside him grew. No matter what she said or did, Noah was determined to expose the truth. It was a mission he had taken on himself, a personal battle where the hope for a happy ending was what drove him. But he knew the fight was just beginning, and he would need all the strength he had to win. Noah had always been a curious boy, but Sophia's phone conversations awakened a new sense of unease within him. He watched her from a distance, speaking in a low voice, whispering things he couldn't fully understand. Every time she stepped away with her phone, he felt a chill run down his spine, as if he knew something was terribly wrong. The courage that once seemed unreachable began to grow inside him. He knew he had to act, but how? He was just a kid trying to decipher a mystery far bigger than himself. The faith that he could uncover the truth was what kept him going. One day, while playing in the living room, he noticed that Sophia locked herself in the office with her phone. That was unusual. She usually talked on the phone in front of everyone, but today, something seemed different. Noah's curiosity overpowered his caution. He crept up slowly, trying not to make any noise. Pressing his ear against the door, he could only catch fragments of the conversation. "Yes, the insurance. Everything is planned. No, he doesn't suspect a thing." Noah's heart raced. Insurance. Planned. What did that mean? He wasn't sure, but a revelation was about to change everything. From that moment on, Noah began to pay even more attention to Sophia's conversations. Every time she picked up the phone and stepped away, he positioned himself to try and listen. Sometimes he could catch a few words, other times only the mysterious tone of her voice. It was like putting together a puzzle without having all the pieces. And with each new bit of information, the sense of danger grew. He wondered, was he imagining things? Maybe it was just a misunderstanding. But something inside him, a voice he couldn't ignore, told him he had to keep going. The truth was there, hidden, waiting to be revealed. One day, Sophia left in a hurry, saying she had something urgent to take care of. Noah knew this was the chance he'd been waiting for. He ran to her room and looked for the phone, but it was locked in a drawer. Not giving up, he picked up the house phone and dialed the number she had called recently, the only one he could remember. The call was answered by a man who seemed surprised. "Hello," the voice on the other end said. Noah froze for a few seconds, unsure of what to say. "Who are you?" he asked, trying to sound confident. The man hesitated before replying, "I'm a friend of Sophia's." "Who is this?" Noah hung up, his heart pounding. What could she be planning? The boy knew the situation was getting more complicated, but giving up wasn't an option. He began to write down everything he heard, every word he could pick up from Sophia's conversations. It was like he was preparing a dossier, gathering evidence for a big case. And in doing so, he felt he was protecting his father from something very bad. But at the same time, the fear of being discovered grew. He felt overwhelmed at the thought of what might happen if Sophia found out he was investigating her. Still, his courage pushed him forward, to face the unknown. One rainy morning, Noah heard Sophia mention something about dates and final plan. It was as if she was organizing everything for a specific moment. Panic took hold of him. He needed to warn his father, but how could he explain everything without sounding like just a scared kid? He started thinking of all the ways he could tell what he knew. Maybe he could show the notes he had made, but what if his father didn't believe him? Doubt gnawed at his mind, but he knew he couldn't back down. Perseverance was all he had at that moment, and the hope that his father would listen to him kept him going. It was during a dinner that Noah finally gathered the courage to speak. His father was excited, talking about the wedding plans. Sophia, by his side, was smiling, but Noah could see the deceit behind that smile. "Dad, can I talk to you later?" he asked, trying to sound casual. "Sure, son. What's going on?" James replied, not noticing the nervousness in the boy's voice. "It's about the wedding. There's something you need to know." Sophia looked at him with a surprised expression that quickly turned into something darker. The moment of truth was coming, and Noah knew he had to be firm. That night, when they were alone, Noah told his father everything he knew. He talked about the conversations he had overheard, the strange words, the man on the phone. But James just laughed, patting his son's head. "Noah, you're a very smart boy, but you're imagining things. Sophia would never hurt us." The boy felt his heart tighten. How could he prove the truth if no one believed him? But even in the face of his father's disbelief, Noah's courage did not waver. He knew something was wrong and would keep trying, even if it took an even bigger revelation to open his father's eyes. Noah didn't give up. He continued to watch Sophia, even if it meant hiding to listen to her conversations. Then, one day, he heard something that confirmed all his fears. "Everything is ready for the date," she said, in a cold voice. "He won't suspect a thing until it's too late." Noah felt his heart stop. The date. Could it be the wedding day? He needed to do something, but what? He ran to his room, feeling tears of frustration in his eyes. Why wouldn't anyone believe him? But giving up was not an option. Love and protection were the forces driving him. He had to save his father, no matter what. Finally, Noah decided he had to get concrete proof. Something that would leave no doubt about Sophia's intentions. He took his father's phone and, with the excuse of playing a game, installed an app to record calls. Now, he just needed to wait for Sophia to make another suspicious call. The following days were full of tension. He was constantly on alert, waiting for the right moment. Then, it happened. Sophia was in the office, talking on the phone. Noah activated the recording, his heart racing. If everything went right, he would finally have the evidence he needed to save his family. When Noah listened to the recording, he felt a mixture of relief and fear. Sophia was clearly talking about the insurance, about how everything was planned. He had the proof he needed. But now, how to show it to his father without Sophia noticing? He had to act carefully, plan every detail. That night, he could hardly sleep. Fear and adrenaline kept him awake. But above all, there was the certainty that he was doing the right thing. Hope was what kept him standing. Deep down, he knew the battle was far from over, but he was ready to face anything. With his heart pounding harder than ever, Noah decided it was time to act. He knew he needed something concrete, something he could show his father without leaving room for doubt. With Sophia out of the house, he entered her room, feeling the weight of each step he took. The silence felt heavier, and he knew he didn't have much time. He remembered all the moments of fear and uncertainty, but also the courage and love that pushed him forward. Finding Sophia's laptop, he hesitated for a moment, but the memory of his father, smiling and happy, gave him the strength to continue. The laptop screen was locked, but Noah, with the determination of a seasoned detective, knew he needed to be quick. He remembered seeing Sophia typing a series of numbers a few times. Her birthday, he thought, trying it. Nothing. Wedding date. Nothing again. But he wouldn't give up. Suddenly, he remembered a conversation where she mentioned a date that was important to her and took a guess. The date she met Noah's father. To his surprise and relief, the screen unlocked. The revelation he was about to find would change everything. Noah felt a wave of nervousness but also determination. With each click, he felt like he was diving into a sea of dark secrets. He searched for emails, messages, anything that could shed light on the mystery surrounding him. Then he found the folder labeled Plans. With trembling fingers, he opened it and saw a series of documents. The first thing he saw was a life insurance policy in his father's name. The amount was enormous, something he could hardly comprehend. But what shocked him the most were the notes beside it, detailing what to do with the money. It was as if all the pieces of the puzzle finally came together. Every conversation he'd overheard, every suspicion he had, was right there in front of him. The emails exchanged with a man named Oliver were clear. They talked about the plan and how everything was about to fall into place. Noah felt a mix of anger and sadness. How could someone be so cruel? But he couldn't let his emotions take over now. He needed to focus and gather as much evidence as possible. He knew this discovery was the key to saving his father, but he didn't yet know how to use it. As he read more and more messages, Noah discovered something even more terrifying. Sophia and Oliver weren't just planning to take the money. They were talking about hurting his father if he didn't cooperate. The boy felt a lump in his throat. What should he do? His mind, despite his young age, was filled with thoughts and strategies. He needed to act, but how? If he told his father everything, would he believe him? And what if Sophia found out what he knew? The fear of putting his father in danger grew by the second, but his faith that everything would be okay kept him going. Noah took a deep breath and decided he needed more proof. He started saving all the emails and documents onto a flash drive he found on the desk. Every second felt like an eternity, and the silence around him was almost deafening. As he copied the files, he thought about how he could give everything to his father without Sophia finding out. He had to be strategic, careful. Time was against him, but perseverance was his greatest weapon. Adrenaline coursed through his body, but he couldn't lose focus. His family's future depended on his actions at that moment. With the flash drive in hand, Noah felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe, with this evidence, he could finally open his father's eyes. But before he could feel relieved, he heard the sound of the front door. Sophia was back. Panic gripped him for a moment, but he knew he couldn't get caught there. He put the flash drive in his pocket and quickly turned off the laptop, trying to leave everything as it was. His mind was racing. How could he get out of that room without her noticing? With his heart in his throat, he hid behind the closet door, listening to every step she took. It was as if time had stopped. Sophia entered the room, and for a moment, Noah thought she would go straight to the laptop. But to his relief, she just picked up her phone and started talking. "Yes, everything is ready. We'll go ahead with the plan on the agreed date." The words echoed in Noah's mind like a hammer. The plan was about to be executed, and he didn't have much time. When she left the room, he took a deep breath, feeling the relief mixed with the urgency to act. Moving silently, he left the closet and went to his room, where he hid the flash drive in a safe place. The next step would be the hardest. That night, Noah could barely sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw his father's happy face and the threatening words he had read on Sophia's laptop. How could he protect his father? The courage he felt was mixed with a deep fear. But he knew he couldn't let it paralyze him. In the morning, he decided that the best way to reveal the truth was in public, where Sophia couldn't deny it. He needed to do it at the wedding, in front of everyone. That way, there would be no escape for her. The idea scared him, but it also gave him strength. He would do whatever it took to save his father. The day of the wedding was approaching, and Noah knew he had to act fast. During a moment when Sophia wasn't around, he showed the flash drive to his father and said they needed to talk. But James, busy with the preparations, didn't pay much attention. Later, "Son, I promise we'll talk later," he said, smiling. Desperation filled Noah. What if there was no later? He knew he couldn't wait. He needed a backup plan, something that would ensure the truth came out. The idea that came to him next was risky, but it was all he could think of. On the day of the wedding, Noah decided he would use the microphone during the vows to reveal the truth. He positioned himself near the stage, watching Sophia's every move. When it was time for the vows, he interrupted everything. "Dad, you need to see this," he said, holding up the flash drive. The tension in the air was palpable. Sophia tried to intervene, but Noah didn't let her. "She's lying to you," he shouted, handing the flash drive to his father. James, confused, looked at his son and then at Sophia. The entire room fell silent, and Noah knew this was the decisive moment. With all eyes on them, James plugged the flash drive into the computer and began to read the emails. The look of shock and pain on his face was evident. Sophia tried to approach him, but he pushed her away. "Is this true?" he asked, his voice trembling. Sophia, cornered, tried to deny it, but the guests were already whispering among themselves. Noah felt a mix of relief and sadness. Finally, the truth was coming out. But what would happen now? Sophia looked at him with a hatred he had never seen before. He knew that even with the truth revealed, the danger was not over. Desperate, Sophia tried to flee, but some guests stopped her. James, still in shock, hugged Noah. "You saved my life, son," he whispered, tears in his eyes. But Noah knew the nightmare wasn't over. Oliver was still out there, and Sophia, even in custody, was still a threat. The revelation had been made, but he felt that this story was far from over. Now, more than ever, he needed to protect his father and himself from any retaliation. The courage that had guided him to this point would now be his greatest weapon to face whatever came next. The big day had finally arrived. All the guests were gathered, the venue adorned with flowers and smiles. But for Noah, this wasn't a celebration. He knew he needed to act before it was too late. Holding the flash drive tightly, he glanced at his father, who seemed radiant beside Sophia, completely unaware of the danger looming over him. Noah felt the weight of responsibility. He knew that any mistake could destroy everything. He would need all the courage he could muster to confront Sophia in front of everyone and reveal the truth. When the officiant asked everyone to be seated for the vows, Noah felt his heart race. His moment was approaching. He knew that if he didn't act, he could lose his father forever. Slowly, he stood up, took a deep breath, and walked to the altar. "Dad, I need to talk to you," he said, trying to keep his voice steady. James, confused, looked at him with a tense smile. "Not now, Noah," he replied, glancing at Sophia, who was trying to hide her unease. But Noah didn't back down. "It's serious, Dad. I know what she's doing." Silence fell over the room. All eyes turned to Noah, and Sophia began to look visibly uncomfortable. "What are you doing, Noah?" she asked, forcing a smile that didn't reach her eyes. But the boy wasn't intimidated. "You're lying to my dad." "I saw everything," he declared, holding out the flash drive. James looked at him and then at Sophia, not knowing what to think. The tension was palpable, and Noah knew this was the decisive moment. He felt that all his faith and perseverance had led him to this point. Sophia, in a last-ditch effort to regain control, tried to approach Noah. "Sweetheart, you're confused. Let's talk about this later," she said, reaching out to him. But Noah stepped back, feeling anger well up inside him. "No, you're not going to hurt my dad." His voice echoed through the hall, and the guests began to murmur among themselves. James, still stunned, took the flash drive from his son's hand and plugged it into the laptop. As he read the emails and documents, his expression changed from disbelief to pain and finally to fury. The revelation hit like a bomb. The guests looked at Sophia, who was now pale and trembling. "Is this true?" James asked, his voice trembling with emotion. Sophia tried to defend herself, saying it was all a misunderstanding, that Noah was making things up. But her eyes, full of fear, said otherwise. Seeing the confusion on his father's face, Noah felt a pang in his chest. He knew he had done the right thing, but the pain of seeing his father shattered by this revelation was almost unbearable. The situation quickly spiraled out of control. Sophia, realizing she was cornered, began to shout. "You don't understand. He's lying. This is all a mistake." She tried to justify herself, but the evidence was irrefutable. Some guests tried to approach her to calm her down, but she broke away, furious. Then Noah saw something that made him freeze. Sophia pulled a small vial from her purse. "No one is going to ruin my plans." Fear gripped the boy, but he knew he couldn't let her hurt anyone else. In a burst of bravery, Noah ran towards her. "Stop her! She's going to hurt someone!" His shouts echoed through the hall, and a few people tried to stop her. James, finally snapping out of his shock, ran after Sophia. But she was already near the door, trying to escape. Chaos ensued. Without thinking, Noah ran to his father, trying to protect him from whatever might happen. The courage that had brought him this far was now mingled with the fear of losing his father forever. That's when the police, called by one of the guests, arrived at the scene. Seeing that she had no way out, Sophia tried to flee through the back door but was intercepted by the officers. She screamed and struggled but was eventually handcuffed and led away. James, still in shock, hugged Noah tightly. "You saved my life, son," he whispered, tears in his eyes. Noah felt a wave of relief, but he knew the danger wasn't completely over. Oliver, Sophia's accomplice, was still out there, and they needed to be prepared for anything. With Sophia in custody, the police began investigating further. Oliver, who had been lurking nearby, waiting to put the plan into action, was located and arrested. When Noah heard about the arrest, he felt a mix of relief and fear. What if Oliver tried to retaliate? But looking at his father, he knew they had overcome the worst. The courage and perseverance that had brought him to this point were proof that they could face anything together. The commotion in the hall was still palpable, but now there was a new hope in the air. Things were finally starting to get back on track. In the days that followed, Noah and James tried to return to normalcy. It wasn't easy. The memories of what had happened were still fresh, but they knew they had to move forward. The bond between father and son grew even stronger. They decided to take a trip, a time to recover and start anew. Deep down, Noah knew that everything they had been through would make them stronger. Love and resilience had been the pillars that kept them going. Even after the confrontation, the hope for better days was what guided their steps. The news about what had happened at the wedding spread through the town. Everyone was shocked by Noah's bravery. He, however, didn't see himself as a hero. He had just done what needed to be done to protect the one he loved. But for James, his son was much more than a hero. He was proof that truth and courage can overcome any adversity. And together, they knew no challenge would be too great. Sophia's revelation had shattered many illusions, but it had also built a new foundation for a future where trust and love would be the priority. Looking back, Noah knew that experience had changed his life forever. The confrontation with Sophia had been just one part of a larger journey of learning and growth. He had learned that even in the toughest situations, it's essential to maintain faith and courage. And above all, that true love gives us the strength to face any storm. There was still much to overcome, but Noah and his father were ready. After everything they had been through, they knew that as long as they were together, nothing could bring them down. After the dramatic revelation at the wedding, tension still hung in the air. The police, called by one of the guests, began questioning everyone and investigating what had happened. James, still in shock, was trying to process everything Noah had revealed. He looked at his son with a mix of pride and sadness, aware of the burden the boy had carried alone. As the officers gathered information, Sophia, handcuffed and visibly furious, was escorted out of the venue. Noah felt a temporary sense of relief, but he knew the danger wasn't entirely over yet. The police officers started examining the flash drive Noah had given to his father. The evidence was clear and incriminating, confirming all their suspicions. Meanwhile, James tried to explain to the officers how it had all started, from the moment Sophia entered his life to the point when Noah felt compelled to act. The boy watched everything in silence, his heart still racing. Despite his fear, he felt that he had done the right thing. His faith that justice would prevail kept him strong, even in the face of so many unfamiliar faces and curious looks. Sophia was taken to the police station for questioning. The officers, now aware of the severity of the situation, launched a search for Oliver, the accomplice who had helped plan the entire scheme. Noah couldn't shake the image of Sophia being driven away in a police car from his mind. He knew this battle was far from over. The feeling of courage still pulsed inside him, but the fear of what could happen next was inevitable. What if Oliver sought revenge? What if there were more people involved? These questions swirled in his mind, But he knew he had to stay strong, for his father's sake. James, concerned for his son's safety, spoke with the police about protection. They assured him they would be vigilant and do everything they could to keep Noah and him safe. Even so, the sense of insecurity lingered. It was as if a shadow was constantly lurking, ready to strike at any moment. The courage Noah had shown by exposing Sophia was admirable, but now they needed to remain calm and level-headed. Every step had to be calculated, and perseverance would be essential to overcome the challenges that lay ahead. As the investigation continued, James decided they needed to get away for a while. Perhaps a trip to the countryside, a peaceful place where they could regain their strength and think clearly about what to do next. Noah, still shaken, agreed. He knew his father needed this time as much as he did. The idea of getting away from everything seemed like a good opportunity to start anew. They packed their bags and, under police escort, left the city for a few days. The time in the countryside would be used to rebuild the bond between father and son, which, though strong, had been tested to its limits. In the peaceful refuge, Noah and James were finally able to breathe. The sound of birds and the fresh air were a welcome contrast to the chaos they had left behind. Nights around the campfire, sharing stories and laughing together, brought back the lightness they hadn't felt in a long time. Even amidst everything, the hope for better days grew stronger. Noah felt that the courage and love that had kept them united during the storm would now guide them to calmer and happier times. With each conversation, each moment shared, they rediscovered and strengthened their relationship. But the calm wouldn't last forever. One day, while they were walking around the property, an unfamiliar car stopped near the entrance. Noah felt his stomach twist. Who could it be? His father, sensing his son's concern, asked him to stay inside while he went to check. It was a police officer bringing news. Oliver had been located and arrested. The relief Noah felt was immense, but the fear still lingered. What if he wasn't the only one? What if Sophia had more accomplices? James, noticing the internal struggle his son was facing, hugged him and promised, "We'll get through this together, Noah. No matter what happens." With Oliver's arrest, the police were able to gather more information about the scheme Sophia had planned. They discovered she had a history of manipulation and fraud, always targeting wealthy and vulnerable men. Noah was shocked to learn all this, but at the same time, he felt a surge of anger. How could someone be so cruel? But now, with both Sophia and Oliver out of the picture, the path to recovery seemed clearer. The faith that everything would be okay was finally starting to come true, and the hope for a future without fear became more tangible each day. Back in the city, James and Noah were welcomed with warmth and support. Friends and neighbors, who previously knew little about what had happened, now treated them like heroes. Noah, despite being shy, felt proud of what he had done. He knew that true heroism wasn't about facing danger but about protecting those we love, even when it means putting ourselves at risk. The words of encouragement and kind gestures helped him understand that even in the darkest of times, there is always light, and that compassion and love are the greatest strengths one can have. As time passed, Noah and James's life began to return to normal. The scars left by the events were still there, but now they were marks of resilience. The courage Noah had shown became an example for many, and their story a testament that truth and justice always prevail. As they walked together through the streets of the city, father and son knew that, no matter how hard things had been, they had emerged stronger. And that, no matter what came next, they would face it all together, with love, faith, and perseverance. After the intense series of events, Noah and James decided they needed time to reconnect and regain their strength. The countryside seemed like the perfect place for that. Far from all the chaos, they found a refuge where they could heal. Every morning, the sound of birds and the fresh scent of nature brought a sense of peace they hadn't felt in a long time. The tranquil environment provided the necessary space for both of them to process everything that had happened. It was time to transform pain and fear into hope and resilience, rebuilding what had been shaken. Noah, who had carried the burden of uncovering Sophia's secret, now felt like he could finally breathe again. He and his father spent hours walking along the trails, talking about the past, the present, and, most importantly, the future. "We'll get through this together," James would repeat, like a mantra that echoed in both their hearts. The belief that they could leave everything behind and move forward was what drove them. With each step they took, they left a little more of the tension and fear behind, strengthening the bond that had always kept them together. During one of these walks, Noah finally opened up about the moments of fear he had lived through. He told his father how hard it was to face Sophia alone, not knowing if anyone would believe him. James listened intently, fighting back the emotions that surged as he imagined his son going through all that. "You were so brave, Noah. I don't know if I would have had the same strength you did," he said, his voice breaking. Those words were exactly what the boy needed to hear. The courage he had shown wasn't just about protecting his father, but also about believing that the truth would always find its way. The nights around the campfire became special moments for both of them. There, under the starry sky, they shared stories, laughed, and allowed themselves to dream again. Noah began to talk about his plans for the future, things he wanted to do, and places he wished to visit. James, in turn, encouraged his son, showing him that even after everything they had been through, there was still room to dream and believe in a better future. "Life is full of twists and turns, son. What matters is how we choose to move forward after them," he said, with a smile that reflected the newfound hope they were rediscovering. One day, while they were fishing by the lake, James asked Noah how he felt now, far away from all the turmoil. The boy thought for a moment and answered honestly, "I feel stronger, Dad. I'm still scared, but I know we can get through anything together." His response moved James deeply. Seeing his son grow and become more resilient, even after everything, was an indescribable relief. The love and compassion that had always existed between them were now even more tangible, like a shield that would protect them from any adversity that might arise. As time went on, their emotional wounds began to heal. The power of nature helped them regain the serenity they had lost. Noah, who had once been plagued by nightmares of Sophia and Oliver, began to sleep better. James also noticed the changes, realizing that their time away from the city, focused solely on each other's well-being, had been the best decision. The belief that everything would be okay was renewed with each sunrise. And gradually, they returned to being who they were before all the chaos. Father and son, united by unconditional love. Their stay in the countryside was essential for both of them to process the changes in their lives. Noah felt that he could finally leave behind the fear and distrust. Each day brought a new lesson in resilience and perseverance. He realized that, despite everything, he could still trust people, and most importantly, trust himself. James, on the other hand, learned to value time with his son even more. After almost losing everything that mattered, he decided he would dedicate more attention and presence to Noah, who had shown himself to be much stronger and more mature than he had ever imagined. The return to the city was peaceful but marked by a new perspective. Noah and James came back more united, ready to face whatever life might bring. The support of friends and neighbors was also crucial in this process. Everyone wanted to know how they were, how they had managed through it all. And even though they still felt some of the weight of the past, father and son knew they were prepared to start anew. The hope for a fresh start, far from the shadows of Sophia and Oliver, shone brighter every day. Noah began to return to his usual activities, going back to school and enjoying his childhood hobbies. James, on the other hand, decided to invest in a new work project, something he had always dreamed of but never had the courage to pursue. They realized that the trauma they had faced had strengthened their decisions and the way they viewed the future. There was no longer any room for irrational fears or paralyzing doubts. Now, everything was about moving forward with courage, knowing that together they could face any challenge. The revelation that had separated them from Sophia had also bonded them in an indestructible way. In the months that followed, Noah and James continued to grow and strengthen. The courage the boy had shown became an inspiration to many in the community. Their story was shared, and people marveled at the strength he had shown in protecting his father. But for Noah, everything he did was out of love. He knew that when you truly love someone, there are no limits to what you're willing to face. And now, more than ever, he was ready for whatever came next. After all, the real secret to overcoming adversity isn't about not being afraid, but about moving forward, even when fear seems unbearable. Now that you've followed this incredible story of courage, perseverance, and unexpected twists, I have to ask, what would you do in Noah's place? Would you have the same courage to face the unknown, to reveal the truth even when everything seemed to be against you? The reality is that life often puts us in situations that seem impossible to overcome, but it's precisely in those moments that we discover the strength we have inside us. And that strength doesn't come from something external. It comes from love and the desire to protect those who truly matter. If you've ever found yourself in a difficult situation where you had to make a tough decision, you know how challenging it can be. And if you haven't experienced this yet, be prepared, because life is full of choices. What defines us is not what happens to us, but how we respond to these events. So, take a moment to reflect on the decisions you've been making. Are you following the truth you feel in your heart, or are you letting fear hold you back? Remember, courage isn't the absence of fear, but the ability to act in spite of it. And, just like Noah, each of us has the power to turn difficulties into opportunities for growth. No matter how big the challenge, what truly matters is not giving up, continuing to move forward, one step at a time. Because, in the end, what really matters are the stories we choose to tell and the legacy we leave behind. If there's one thing this story has taught us, it's that love is the most powerful force there is. And when we act out of love, we're capable of facing anything. So, I invite you to reflect, what challenges do you need to face today? What truths do you need to reveal, to yourself or to others? Noah's journey shows us that, no matter how difficult it may be, it's possible to overcome anything when we have courage, faith, and love. And if he, at just 9 years old, managed to change the destiny of his family, imagine what you can do with your own life. Never underestimate the power of a single action, of a single decision. Because it's that very decision that can change everything. If this story inspired you, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications to keep following content like this. Let's explore more stories of perseverance and courage, stories that, like Noah's, show us that we are capable of much more than we imagine. Leave a comment about what impacted you the most and share this message of hope and strength with someone who needs it. And remember, life always gives us the chance to write new chapters. May the next one be the best chapter of your story.